Part 38. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 371. Zuyun was just distracted, and a cold light flashed in Zhu Feng's eyes. Although he didn't know what caused the commotion, at least something that could cause a person in the Dan formation stage to react like this must be his best chance to escape. Taking advantage of the reduced pressure at this time, Zhu Feng carefully took out several talismans in his arms. These were all given to him by Sun Suanhua. He knew that it might be difficult to hurt Zuyun. But it can give yourself a chance to breathe. As long as you don't die, you will eventually have a chance to turn around. Zhu Feng did not crawl out from the blood sea of Corpse Mountain, but he also survived in the boundless sea for several months and killed no less than 1,000 people. His character is comparable to Zuyun. It's just that he has a cold-blooded nature. Likewise, this kind of character created his calmness. As for Zuyun, as the movement slowly increased, a strange color gradually appeared on his face. With a thought, he moved his right hand to call back the black sword. At the same time, he grabbed Zhu Feng in the air with his right hand and flew away from the formation. You want to die? Zhu Feng's hand in his arms was holding more than 10 firebird talismans tightly, and he asked with a cold expression. He didn't know what was going on. But from the analysis of Zhu Feng's expression, it seemed that the situation was a bit serious. Shut up. Zuyun didn't even look at him and flew towards the direction of the sound. Curiosity can kill people, Zuyun. According to my experience in the past few years, fleeing to Wanjian Mountain and using those pill-forming periods is the right way. Zhu Feng said boldly, but Zuyun couldn't help but secretly thought that this kid actually coincided with his own thoughts. He originally thought that if it was too dangerous, he would find a way to sneak into Wanjian Mountain. Although Wanjian Mountain was destroyed, it had to be said that if the 20 Danja stagers joined forces, they would indeed be unrivaled in the entire Yezhu. Aren't you afraid of death? Zuyun retorted, before Zhu Feng always said he would kill if he wanted to, with an air of fearlessness and unafraid of death. I'm not afraid of death, but it's better to die than live. Why should I die if I can live? Listening to these logical words, Zuyun was unable to refute, thinking that if he continued to speak, he might be persuaded by Zhu Feng. He simply shut up and stopped talking, and flew towards the west at full speed. That's where the noise came from. From what he could see, it was probably a tide of beasts. However, even though there are monster beasts in Yezhu, there is definitely no possibility of a beast tide. Could it be that they are from Chuzhu? Could it be related to the conspiracy of the Demon Refining Tower and the Lord of Naihuo City? If this is really the case, then Yezhu may be in ruins. After flying for a while, the sky gradually became brighter. Wherever you can see, there are many flying black spots in the sky. After taking a closer look, they were all foundation building monks flying with their respective weapons. It looked like he was running for his life. And behind them, they were chasing some flying monsters. From time to time, some monks would fall off their magical instruments, obviously being attacked by the magic of these monsters. Under the void-breaking spirit eye technique, no matter how far apart these magic arts are, there is nothing to hide them from. At the same time, almost all the foundation building monks discovered where Zuyun was and flew towards him one after another. Senior, help! Senior, there is a tide of beasts, there is a tide of beasts, and there is a big demon behind us. Senior, the beast wave is like entering a deserted land, and we in the foundation building stage are as small as dust. Seeing that Zuyun was able to fly in the air with one person, they still couldn't recognize that he was a senior in the pill formation stage. During the foundation building period, they had no choice but to escape, and Zuyun was their only hope for survival. As they flew over, they used up their spiritual power and shouted. Many monks regarded Zuyun as a senior who passed by with his disciples. Listening to all kinds of panicked shouts, Zhu Feng sneered, Zuyun, do you believe it or not, these monks are flying towards you, just using you as a shield. Zuyun frowned and ignored it. It doesn't matter to him whether it's a shield or not, because he doesn't want to intercept the beast tide here. He has experienced many beast tides and knows the horror of beast tides. But things turned out as Zhu Feng expected. These foundation building periods passed by him one after another, without even stopping to tell him any news, they just flew by. And those chasing birds and monsters also rushed towards Zuyun, who was standing in the way. Did you see that? If you don't take action, don't say I'm going to die, you're going to die too. Zhu Feng suddenly reminded him. Zuyun flicked his right arm, and the black sword swept across the air. Just like in the big formation before Zuyun's eyes, another villain from the Wuji sword art appeared out of thin air. But Zuyun had no time to think about why this was the case. With the power of the black sword, the bird demon that rushed forward was immediately cut in half by Zuyun, and the rest of the bird demons also gathered towards Zuyun. This gave him almost no time to think. Zuyun is not good at sword moves, but he also knows how to use his strengths and avoid weaknesses. Since the black sword can kill the bird demon directly, he doesn't need to use sword moves. The void-breaking spiritual eye technique can easily target the bird demon. Wherever it comes from, Zuyun cuts off the black sword. In just one stick of incense, it seemed as if blood rained down on the world. It's all the blood of these harpies. Zhu Feng was surprised. He has a new understanding of Zuyun's strength. But he didn't take it to heart. In his opinion, Zuyun was just doing useless work. When the beast tide comes, it may not be so easy to retreat. Thinking of this, he said again, if we don't leave now, it won't be so easy when the beast tide comes. There are many bird monsters killed, but there are more coming from behind. Even if Zhu Feng only looks with his naked eyes, in the sky in the far west, the monster birds formed a huge dark cloud, almost covering the sky and the earth. Humph! Zuyun snorted coldly, and quickly slashed a few swords to cut down the bird monster that was approaching, and then stood up and stabbed, and a huge sword energy came out majestically. Huh? Sword energy released. Zuyun couldn't help shouting out loud. He was very familiar with the sword control technique, and he also knew how to release sword energy, but Zuyun's sword energy was a bit too exaggerated, right? It was actually several feet wide. No, this is not sword energy released. But in an instant, he exclaimed, because the sword energy suddenly dispersed into countless paths, each of which pierced a bird monster. In front of him, a vacuum zone was formed. At this time, Zuyun also began to retreat with Zhu Feng. Zuyun, what sword move is this? It is obviously the same sword move as the sword energy release, but the sword energy released is so scattered. Zhu Feng asked again. Zuyun was also extremely shocked. Indeed. At the beginning, he wanted to use the sword energy release to kill the bird demon rushing in front of him. Unexpectedly, when the sword energy was shot out, not only did a small figure appear in front of his eyes, but also an inexplicable idea appeared in his mind. This idea told him that as long as the spiritual consciousness was dispersed and locked on the bird demon, the sword energy would be divided and attacked. Naturally, Zuyun subconsciously followed his thoughts to do it, but he didn't expect that it would really have this effect. Zuyun knew that this must be related to the Wuji sword art. He has been killing bird demons, not for love. With his habit, meaningless fighting and killing, he will never put himself in danger. Just because, with every move he made with the sword, the shadow of the little man would appear in front of him. As soon as these shadows appeared, he immediately remembered that such sword moves had appeared in the Wuji sword art. As he killed more and more bird monsters, Zuyun found that the shadows would no longer appear with some identical moves. Moreover, after these shadows appeared again, his body would remember the moves. So much so that later, he killed these bird monsters completely relying on his body's instincts. As he surged with spiritual power and retreated, his mind was full of speculations about the Wuji sword art. But his attainments in the sword art were not even comparable to Zhu Feng's, so how could he understand the sword art? When I have time, I will practice on the sword mountain, and then soak in the sword pool. Maybe I can gain something. The black sword has proven to be a supreme weapon. If it is supplemented with a powerful sword art, Zhu Yun's combat power will reach a new level. But now, it is obviously inappropriate. At this time, these overwhelming bird monsters finally attracted the attention of Wang Jianshan. Or, it was the foundation building stage who had fled before that made the Jindan stage elders ready. However, when Jianyi and others were all floating in the sky, looking at the bird monsters and beasts that covered the sky, their faces were no longer calm. Only Jian'er suddenly swung a sword in the air and slashed at Zhu Yun. The target was the left hand that he had grabbed Zhu Feng. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 372. Boy, let go of my disciple. Just before, the fleeing Foundation establishment stagers alerted Wanjian Mountain. When they learned that a tide of beasts was coming, a group of pill formation stagers who had experienced it in Scarlet Flame City flew into the air one after another. Although they had accepted those talented disciples as their disciples before, the only one who could truly be considered a direct disciple was Zhu Feng of Xianxia. The sword was nowhere to be found. After asking around, I found out that Zhu Feng had not returned all night. At this moment, seeing him being held in a panic by Zhu Yun, how could he not know that Zhu Yun was being kidnapped? Under the tense atmosphere, he would not give Zhu Yun a chance to explain. He hadn't even noticed the familiar black sword in Zhu Yun's hand. Xianxia is also at the peak of the late stage of pill formation, and he takes the lead again. How can Zhu Yun dare to take it head on? It was even too late for him to hide, and he had never used the thunder escape technique in the air. In desperation, he released Zhu Feng, took out an armor talisman from his arms and threw it out. Boom! The strike of Xianxia directly shattered the armor, and the huge turbulent flow of spiritual power caused by Zhu Feng flew far away again. Zhu Feng also reacted very quickly. His soul summoning flag was still thrown into the hills and valleys, but he quickly took out a spiritual sword, stepped on it, and then flew towards those camps in the pill formation stage. He even didn't forget to throw more than 10 Firebird talismans at Zhu Yun. Sun Suanhua's Firebird talisman is even better than Zhu Yun. In addition to its power, both the speed at which the Firebird takes shape and its precise positioning are unparalleled by Zhu Yun. Moreover, Zhu Feng has also reached the foundation building stage, so there is no pressure to use this intermediate talisman. In an instant, more than 10 Firebirds flew towards Zhu Yun. Behind him, another demonic bird attacked. Zhu Yun suddenly fell into a situation where he was attacked from two sides. But the danger is far from that. Jian'er's action also attracted the attention of the other elders. Jianyi's eyes just glanced at this familiar color. What's more, he had fought with Zhu Yun several times, and even though he couldn't recognize Zhu Yun, this sword was something he would never forget. It's the kid who stole the sword. Kill him first. Jianyi had supreme prestige, and immediately, except for Jian'er, the other 19 elders all took action, with various sword moves and various sword powers, attacking Zhu Yun head-on. In the flash of lightning, Zhu Yun had only one thought in his mind. Chaos Palm. This is his last trump card, a trick that can kill the nascent soul stage. Faced with all-out attacks that were at least in the middle stage of pill formation, he didn't even think about being able to block them. Only use more powerful attacks to suppress them. As Zhu Yun drove the Chaos Palm, the seed in Zhu Yun's lower abdomen suddenly opened a hole in its surface. In the blink of an eye, the huge chaos power had all condensed on his palm. The Chaos Palm, which was comparable to a blow from the nascent soul stage, rushed towards those elders. The spiritual power stirred the air, the wind and clouds surged, and the color of the world changed. Even the demon birds behind Zuyun were shocked by this momentum and stopped moving forward. Their demon eyes were full of fear. That was a tremor from the bottom of my heart. Boom! The Chaos Palm met nearly 20 sword forces in an instant. Facing the majestic Chaos Palm force, all the alchemy stagers felt like they were mortals facing an overwhelming wave. Small. Their livers and gallbladders were shattered, and they dared not even think about the black sword. They all fled in all directions, taking their respective sword steps. It was also a shame that Zuyun's palm was just to offset the power of the sword. Otherwise, no matter which person it falls on, there will be no bones left. The Chaos Palm didn't hit anyone, but when all the power of the sword was blown away, the force of the Chaos Palm also knocked them to the ground while they were fleeing. And Zuyun is not much better. He lost all his spiritual power and fell headlong towards the ground. Fortunately, he still has a flying boat. Golden light flashed, and Zuyun fell heavily onto the flying boat. Before those bird demons could react, he quickly controlled the flying boat and headed south at high speed. It's too dangerous. Zuyun panted heavily, sat up from the flying boat, leaned on the edge of the boat and looked back. The wave of bird monsters separated into a group and chased him. But obviously, not as fast. The rest all flocked to those in the den formation stage, and Zuyun looked as if they were being swallowed up by dark clouds. However, Zuyun knew that this tide of beasts could not wipe out the entire Wanjian mountain army. After all, a person who is as strong as a sword, or a second-class sword, and who is at the peak of the late stage of pill formation, will definitely be able to fight his way out. At this moment, he could see sword lights flashing through the black tide of bird monsters. Wherever the sword light reached, it was like the mutated sword energy he used was released, and a vacuum appeared. I just don't know if Zhu Feng will be abandoned by Wang Jianshan. Thinking of this, Zuyun felt mixed emotions in his heart. Zuyun breathed a long sigh of relief when he saw that no more bird demons were chasing him. He no longer looked at how the people in Wanjian Mountain would respond. He has too much time to take care of himself, so now he can only find a place to hide in the day-glazed mirror. Not only must he recover his spiritual power, but he must also practice sword techniques and understand the way of swordsmanship. The sword cultivator himself has extremely strong fighting power. If he supplements it with his own chaos power, perhaps when he encounters this beast wave again, he will not be as dangerous as he is today. At this time, everyone in Wanjian Mountain was miserable. Except for the 3 peaks of Jianyi, Jiantu, Jiansan, who are in the late stage of forming pills, the others can only work in pairs to deal with it together. Harpies are not strong, but they are faster and more numerous. And from time to time, they will release sorcery to attack their weak points. Brother Yi, it's too much. If it goes on any longer, we won't be able to hold on anymore. Jian chopped off the head of a bird demon with one sword, splattering demon blood on his face. Back off, back off, back off. Jianyi shouted 3 times in succession, and everyone waited, then retreated in an orderly manner. But Jian'er's speed was slower. Because he was holding Zhu Feng with one hand, the impact area was naturally larger. Second brother, why do you still need to protect a boy who is in the foundation building stage? Jian-san was very puzzled. Although he didn't say it directly, both Jian'er and Zhu Feng understood it, and the implication was to ask him to give up Zhu Feng. He is my apprentice. Jian'er didn't even look back, he shouted in a deep voice, and then whispered to Zhu Feng, look carefully, the sword art you passed on to me is actually the sword art I have practiced for 600 years. Zhu Feng narrowed his eyes and looked a little dismissively. He uses the sword only to confuse people. But in this situation, if he wanted to survive, he had to listen to Jian'er, so he watched Jian'er's moves and secretly remembered them in his heart. He looked dangerous, but in fact he was completely fine. If it were just Xianxia alone, it would be a bit stretched. But with Xianyi and Xianzan standing by to help him from time to time, he was in no danger. Everyone fought and retreated, and soon 20 people formed a large sword formation. Under the instruction of Xian'er, Zhu Feng was surrounded in the center of the sword formation. They are all in the elixir formation stage, so how powerful is this sword array? Wherever it goes, the harpy simply cannot survive. Soon, they broke out of the encirclement. After Jianyi gave the order, 10 people from him to Jianxi took cover. Except for Jian 15, the other 9 took out the flying boat. The first 10 people each exhausted their spiritual power, used their ultimate moves, and killed countless bird demons. Then they boarded the flying boats and sped towards the distance. And those in the foundation building period will all sleep here. The ground was seeped red with blood. There was a fishy wind in the air. Boom. At this time, suddenly there was thunder in the sky. The bird demons that were about to chase seemed to be frightened, so they stopped one after another and flew back crazily along the original path. If Zuyun were here, he would definitely think of countermeasures. These monsters are actually afraid of thunder? The heaven-gathering thunder talisman will be of great use. Moreover, he can also transform the power of thunder. If he uses the power of thunder to release the mutated sword energy, he may be able to kill countless bird demons in one move. It's a pity that Zuyun didn't know it at this time. To the west of here, 50 miles away, a man in black is hanging in the air, holding a black tower in the palm of his right hand. This black tower is the reduced demon refining tower. Boom. Thunder suddenly struck, and he opened his eyes suddenly, then frowned and said, "These monster beasts are actually afraid of thunder? If not, how could those in the Dan formation stage of Wanjian Mountain escape?" His eyes fell on the ground, and he saw that the black monster beasts also began to stir. Obviously, these monsters were also affected by the thunder. The ancestor didn't say that the monsters in the demon refining tower are afraid of thunder. I don't know if the 11 big monsters are afraid of thunder. By the way, the ancestor said that there are 12 great demons in the demon refining tower. Why is there one missing? If I massacre all the way to Peeper Realm and he uses this as an excuse, what should I do? He muttered to himself, and then threw the demon refining tower toward the ground. The black tower floated out of thin air without actually landing, and began to rotate, making strange sounds. What's even more weird is that streams of black energy gush out from the bronze door on the ground floor. After a moment, the copper door suddenly opened. The monster beast underneath seemed to have suffered from boundless suction, and was slowly sucked into the mid-air by the monster refining tower. After approaching the copper gate, his figure quickly shrank, and then he was sucked into the demon refining tower. When all the monsters entered the demon refining tower, in the distance, the bird monsters also returned under his control and flew straight into the copper gate. Boom! The sky has darkened, like a dark night. The flash of lightning quickly turned into some thunder snakes and struck down. The bird demons that could not enter the bronze door in the future were suddenly chopped into powder. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 373. It seems that these monsters are afraid of thunder. The Lord of Naihuo City's face was slightly condensed. After refining the demon refining tower, he slaughtered all the way from Chuzhu to here, but he never encountered a thunderstorm. But during the refining process, it was known that the monsters in the tower were all afraid of thunder. However, in the demon refining tower, there is no need for this. In order to be able to refine the demon refining tower, he not only killed tens of thousands of monsters in the foundation building stage and the bottom layer, but when he found that the blood volume was not enough, he killed all his subordinates. Now, he is alone. But with such a powerful treasure as the demon refining tower, what do the others mean? The demon sect ancestor, I wonder if he is deceiving me. This demon refining tower is already so powerful, how powerful can the technique he wants to give me in exchange be? It seems that it is necessary to keep a hand. He muttered to himself for a while and put away the demon refining tower. The thunder was rolling, and he could no longer use the monsters to hunt down the people in Wanjian Mountain. Going alone, he couldn't handle it, so he simply fell from the sky and found a place to hide from the rain. He just waited for the thunderstorm to pass and then fought his way through. Regardless of whether they are human or demon, absorbing the vitality and blood food of these people will enhance his control over the demon refining tower. At this time, Zuyun had already hid in the Diwu glass mirror. The chaos palm allowed him to escape to heaven, and it was impossible for him to come out of the mirror before he fully recovered his spiritual power. Moreover, a fight outside gave him a new understanding of the Wuji sword technique. Perhaps, it wasn't Jianju that was funny, but himself. Sitting on the edge of the void, Zuyun sat cross-legged in silence, slowly refining his qi. When he used the chaos palm, the spiritual power surged out, and the seeds in his lower abdomen were even opened. After Zuyun carefully observed it, he found that there was nothing abnormal, and then he started practicing. After reaching the pill building stage, Zuyun's spiritual power increased several times. Although the cultivation speed was much faster, it actually took more time than the foundation building stage. By the time his spiritual power was fully charged, more than 6 hours had passed. And he looked inside again, focusing all his attention on the seed wall. The gap is still there. Even while practicing, all the chaos power poured into the seeds from the gap. When you have the chance, you must ask Sun Qiniang what happened to her golden elixir. Zuyun looked at it for a long time and couldn't figure out why. He just withdrew from his mind and slowly opened his eyes. It's time to practice sword practice. If you use the Wuji sword technique, which was taught in the Jade Slip, the villain will appear again. So, you can only give it a try first. When he entered, the black sword had already flown back to the sword mountain on its own initiative. Zuyun walked slowly toward the mountains. When he reached the point where the sword light flickered most densely, he summoned the black sword back with a casual move. Buzz. As if sensing Zuyun's intention to start sword practice, the black sword let out a clear cry. It's strange. This sword has no sword spirit. How can I feel the sword's emotions? Zuyun flicked the sword, and at the same time he remembered the boundless fighting spirit revealed on the black sword when he had just refined it, and was suddenly a little confused. He scratched his head and put the thought aside. No matter what the black sword is like, as long as you can master it, it won't be a problem. After thinking for a moment, Zuyun used an extremely weird posture to thrust the sword through his armpit with his backhand. He remembered that he always faced the enemy head-on, so there was no way he would use this move. Maybe this trick has also appeared in the teachings of Jade Slips? Really? As soon as the sword was raised, the villain behind Zuyun's sword appeared in front of him. Zuyun's eyes lit up, he took a step back and raised his right hand outward, still in a weird posture, extremely awkward. It's another little person. I can't say that they are completely similar, I can only say that they are exactly the same. Zuyun had a bold idea in his mind. He no longer insisted on holding a sword in his hand, but started dancing wildly. Sometimes the rock spreads its wings in the spear, and sometimes it sweeps away thousands of troops in the sword technique. But no matter what kind of action it is, a villain will appear in front of him. The faster you move, the faster the villain appears. And after every little person floats by, it will be clearly imprinted in his mind. After using hundreds of moves, Zuyun became more cheerful. He threw the black sword away and flew down from the sword mountain and ran into the cave. All the elf medicine practitioners were shocked and wondered what was causing Zhu Yun's madness. That boy, has he become a demon in practicing swordsmanship? Huang Longshi shook his body and said. Xue Jinsen was startled and hurriedly hid in the pit, tremblingly saying, "You're crazy, you're not going to chop off my beard, are you?" Ziwanko chuckled, "Is that your beard? It's clearly legs. It's okay, you won't die if you chop it off a few times. You have many legs anyway." Hong Yi said attentively, "I look at it, it seems that he has realized something. Should he go to the cave to get something?" As soon as he finished speaking, Zhu Yun rushed out of the cave, holding a small blue book in his hand. There are 3 big characters written on the cover of the book. Sword Control Technique. Yes, it was the sword technique that Zhu Yungang acquired when he first joined the Lingjian sect. He hurried back to his original position again, and the black sword returned to Zhu Yun's hand. Zhu Yun held the sword part with his left hand and danced the sword according to the moves on it. The more he practices, the more excited he becomes. Because, even if it is a sword move in the sword control technique, after he uses it, a villain will appear and be deeply imprinted in his mind. Moreover, I have a new understanding of sword moves. When Zhu Yun understood all the sword moves in the sword control technique, he suddenly threw the sword control technique out, and then looked up to the sky and smiled. "Ha ha ha, I get it, I get it." The Wuji sword technique is also a no-move sword technique. There is no move to win without any move, and any move is a sword move. In the medicine garden at the foot of the mountain, close to the waterfall, the elixirs could only hear Zhu Yun's loud shouts, but could not hear what Zhu Yun shouted. Blood Ginseng murmured, "It's over, now I'm really crazy." Huang Longshi grumbled, "Is this 100,000-year-old living dog of yours? That kid must have become enlightened." "That's right," Zi Yuanko said, "I have heard the master say before that the highest state of swordsmanship is to win without a move but with a move. By the way, Hong Ye, what else did the master say after that?" Hong Ye was stunned for a moment, then blurted out, "As long as there is a sword in your heart, everything can be a sword." After the words fell, they saw Zhu Yun throw the black sword violently. The black sword returned to its position freely, while Zhu Yun moved his fingers together in various weird postures. All the elixirs were confused, but they didn't know that Zhu Yun had already fallen into boundless ecstasy. With the sword in hand, a villain will appear. But even if there is no sword in hand, it is still the same. In other words, this Wuji sword technique can be used even without a sword in hand. After an unknown amount of time, Zhu Yun finally felt a little tired. It wasn't physical fatigue, but the small figures imprinted on Zhu Yun's soul, which made his mind a little unbearable. The spiritual power was not used at all. He sat directly on the ground, his face full of ecstasy. The Wuji sword technique brings about more than just sword moves. Zhu Yunfang sat there for a long time, concentrating, and then slowly recovered. The ecstasy in his eyes had faded away, leaving only an extremely strong confidence. Originally, his means were limited. If someone was close to him, he could only rely on the chaos palm to make a last-ditch effort. But now, with the black sword and Wuji sword technique, his combat power has been greatly enhanced again. Call. After exhaling a long breath, Zhu Yun casually summoned the black sword again. Holding the sword in his hand again, he had a completely different understanding. By the way, when I used my sword energy to release it, the sword energy suddenly mutated. It must be related to the Wuji sword technique. Suddenly, Zhu Yun recalled the first time he faced those bird demons. It was also at that time that he felt the terror of the Wuji sword art. It seems that Wuji sword technique still has a lot of power waiting for me to discover. It's no wonder that swordsmen need to strengthen their understanding of the sword through fighting. Withdrawing his gaze, Zhu Yun turned back and went down the mountain. Next, he was going to take a dip in the sword pool to feel the power of the sword. I am now a sword cultivator who has become a monk on the way. I wonder if I can gain anything. It would be too wasteful to sit on a mountain of swords and not practice swordsmanship. When he reached the fork in the road below, Zuyun turned toward the sword pond. When he got the sword pool, he held the black sword and jumped straight into it. Call out. As Zuyun entered the sword pool, countless sword powers surged towards Zuyun crazily. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 374. This was Zuyun's first time entering the sword pool, and he had no experience. Each sword force was like a sharp sword, cutting back and forth on his skin. It was like a monster in the sea that smelled blood, and it pounced on him frantically. Even though he had swallowed countless body-shaping pills during the foundation building period. Even though he had now reached the stage of forming a pill. But he couldn't stand it, and these sword forces were grinding his body bit by bit. At first, Zuyun thought it was a normal situation in the sword pool, and the sword force was grinding his body. He also thought that the sword force, like the spiritual force, could be absorbed into the body for refining. But when the blood soaked the sword pool, it was too late for him to regret. Ah! A scream resounded throughout the immortal mansion, and at the same time, those sword forces had already flowed into his body along the cut wounds, wantonly destroying his meridians and flesh. He wanted to run, but his meridians were damaged. Not only could he not use his spiritual power, he didn't even have the physical strength to get up. Is he going to die here? This sentence suddenly appeared in Zuyun's mind. At this time, he only had spiritual consciousness, but spiritual consciousness could not help him get up from the pool at all. What to do? Sword power madly attacked Zuyun's body, layer by layer, getting deeper and deeper. Wherever it went, the meridians were almost destroyed. He felt countless kinds of sword power. Some were sharp, some were blunt, some were fast, and some were soft. But no matter which one, it had a great killing power on his body. Finally, the first sword power broke through his lower abdomen and appeared in front of the seed. Without any delay, the sword power quickly rushed to the seed. It's over. Zuyun exclaimed in his heart. He couldn't move at all. When he saw that the sword power was about to rush in through the gap, he suddenly felt a suction force generated by the seed. Swoosh! Instantly, the speed of the sword force suddenly increased, but it was sucked into the seed. Then, the second and third sword forces followed one after another, but without exception, they were all sucked into the seed. As long as the seed is not destroyed and the soul is not extinguished, he will not die. All of a sudden, Zuyun put down the heavy stone in his heart for no reason. Although, he still had severe and continuous pain in his body. After knowing that he would not die, his mentality also changed. The external injuries of the Jindan stage will repair themselves. These sword forces continue to cut the wounds, and the body continues to repair itself. But in the end, the speed of repair is not as fast as the speed of cutting. In addition, Zuyun's blood flowed continuously, and these blood dyed the entire sword pool red. It was just an unexpected scene. When these sword forces poured into Zuyun's body, they would bring his blood back into Zuyun's body. At this time, several spiritual medicines rushed to Zuyun's body. He looked carefully and found a familiar red shadow surrounded by them. That red color was naturally the 10,000-year-old blood ginseng. It was struggling constantly, as if it was extremely reluctant to come here. Zuyun didn't understand why. At this time, he couldn't communicate with the spiritual medicine at all. He could only open his eyes and reveal a puzzled look. The blood ginseng was tied up by the yellow dragon tree with fine branches, and the purple grass and rainbow leaves were separated on both sides. In addition, there were several spiritual medicines. They looked ordinary, and Zuyun didn't remember their names. As they walked to the edge of the sword pool, the rainbow leaf suddenly separated a green leaf and directly cut off several ginseng whiskers of the blood ginseng. The purple grass flashed quickly, dragged up the ginseng whiskers, and then carefully combined with other spiritual medicines to send the ginseng whiskers to Zhu Yun's mouth. This is... Zhu Yun stared. No matter how stupid he was, he understood that these spiritual medicines wanted to use the blood ginseng whiskers to replenish their blood. Perhaps, they heard his screams just now. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun did not hesitate, opened his mouth and swallowed all the ginseng whiskers. After chewing for a while, a rich blood and qi came from his mouth. After swallowing it, a warm current immediately filled his whole body. In an instant, the wounds that should have been painful became itchy. Zhu Yun suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the dejected blood ginseng. He knew that it was the blood ginseng whiskers that were helping him recover. The numbness and itchiness meant the regeneration of flesh and blood. The body immersed in the pool was almost cut into a mass of rotten meat. Under the effect of the blood ginseng whiskers, it slowly began to recover. No matter how strong and how much power the sword pool had, it was unexpected that it could not match the speed of recovery. Not only was the skin recovering, but the meridians were also gradually growing back together. Not long after, Zhu Yun felt that he could use his spiritual power to get up. Just as he was about to exert force, he suddenly focused his attention on his lower abdomen. Suddenly, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Although the sword energy from the outside world was still pouring into Zhu Yun's body from the wound, the speed had slowed down a lot as his body recovered and his skin became tougher. But in his lower abdomen, the speed at which the seed devoured the sword energy did not slow down much. And soon, the sword energy was exhausted. Zhu Yun felt it carefully again and was surprised to find that there was not a trace of sword energy in the chaotic energy in the seed. In other words, these sword powers could actually be transformed into chaotic energy. When the sword energy could not break Zhu Yun's body, he suddenly turned out of the sword pool. This sword pool was too mysterious. Who could guess what would happen next? Will there be more powerful sword energy? This time, if these elixirs hadn't saved him, he would have turned into a piece of rotten flesh in the sword pool. Zhu Yun vaguely felt that he had gained something, so he sat cross-legged on the edge of the sword pond and concentrated on penetrating his spiritual consciousness into the seeds. Originally, he could not enter the inside of the seed. But at this time, there was a gap on the surface of the seed, and Zhu Yun's spiritual consciousness broke into it directly along the gap. Boom, boom, boom. Listening to the dull sound, Zhu Yun's eyes were filled with gray fog. But every now and then, there are flashes of color. Zhu Yun looked at it intently. In addition to the colors of the 5 elements, there was also the purple color of thunder spirit power. Apart from that, he couldn't see anything else at all, and there was no way to discover the power of the sword. It seems that it has really been transformed into chaos power. So, chaos power is the root of all things, and even sword power can be transformed. Zhu Yun was confused and pulled his spiritual consciousness out of the seed, and then out of the body. Slowly opening his eyes, he saw that the elixirs had also returned to the medicine garden. Come to think of it, I just thought he was fine, so I didn't want to stay here and disturb Zhu Yun. Faintly, Zhu Yun actually felt a little moved. Originally, these elixirs did not recognize him as their master, but subconsciously, Zhu Yun still regarded himself as their master. But at this time, he put aside this idea. He transformed into a metal spirit body and planned to go to the medicine garden to thank the elixirs in person. Flying directly down the hillside, Zhu Yun arrived at the edge of the medicine garden. Boy, seeing as you can still fly, you should be fine, right? Huang Longshu said with a smile. Zhu Yun also smiled and said, thank you all for sending it to me at a critical moment. Speaking of this, he glanced at the blood ginseng lying in the pothole. The blood ginseng obviously had no eyes, but he felt a kind of resentment. Thank you very much. Zhu Yun said sincerely to the blood ginseng. Shui ginseng seemed a little weak and said, "Don't seek death next time. How can you enter the sword pool casually?" After saying that, it got into the hole and stopped emerging. Zhu Yun scratched his head. It was indeed his fault for not asking clearly. I just heard these elixirs say that the sword pool is used to understand the power of swords. Who would have thought that these sword powers would be so difficult to deal with? Almost died in it? Ziyuanko said, "Zhu Yun, you just practice swordsmanship, right? You don't have a deep understanding of swordsmanship. If you enter the sword pool rashly, you will naturally feel the power of these swords. If you could understand a little more, you wouldn't be like this." Hong Yi nodded immediately and said, "When the master entered the sword pool before, he always asked us to watch on the side to prevent accidents. Who knew you were so straightforward and ran in directly? If it hadn't been for your miserable cry yell, we wouldn't know you were so reckless." Zhu Yun's face turned red. This time, he was indeed a little negligent. Fortunately, there is no other danger in his immortal mansion. If this were outside, who could save him? Even if someone comes, I'm afraid they will add insult to injury. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun felt lingering fear. By the way, do you need to know swordsmanship to enter sword pool? I practiced Wuji sword pool, isn't that enough? Zhu Yun suddenly remembered what Ziyuanko said before. The promise sword technique. Suddenly, all the elixirs screamed in surprise, and even the blood ginseng popped up from the pit. Seeing this, Zhu Yun was also shocked and said, "You also know the Wuji sword art." "In terms of swordsmanship, I am considered a beginner. The Wuji sword technique was learned from the Jade Slips, and it is related to Sword Mountain and even more to the Immortal Mansion. So, this sword technique should be the sword technique that the original owner of the Immortal Mansion knew. Then you naturally know these elixirs. But the question is, why do they have such a big reaction?" When the exclamation stopped, Huang Longshu said in a deep voice, "Zhu Yun, you can't grasp this sword technique. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 375. Why? Zhu Yun was stunned and asked hurriedly. He finally had a powerful sword technique, and he also had extremely strong combat power when facing the tide of monsters. Why did Huang Longshu say that he couldn't control it? Ziyuanko also said solemnly, "Zhu Yun, this sword art is the supreme sword art in the immortal world. You are just a monk in the lower realm now. Your realm is too weak, and I'm afraid you will suffer backlash." Suddenly, Zhu Yun was speechless. After he had some insights and vaguely grasped some clues, he didn't even realize that this was a problem. You can obviously use it, so why do you suffer backlash? There is no such problem at all, right? Zhu Yun, don't believe it? Hong Yi also spoke at this time, saying, "The aura on your body is still too weak, it's best not to practice. The immortal sword art is not as simple as you think." Zhu Yun immediately fell silent after hearing what the elixirs said. If a magical elixir said this, Zhu Yun wouldn't believe it too much, but these are the earliest elixirs that can become spirits. Is it really not suitable for him to practice by himself? Seeing Zhu Yun deep in thought, all the elixirs did not speak. They all knew that Zhu Yun needed to convince himself. His excitement could be seen from before, and Zhu Yun felt like he had found a treasure. But it was really hard for him to give up suddenly at this time. Huang Longshu couldn't bear it, and after thinking for a moment, he said, "Zhu Yun, we don't know much about the Wuji sword technique, but we also know that the master has never perfected the sword technique throughout his life. You can imagine that the master is an immortal in the immortal world. This is the case in the imperial capital, let alone a little monk like you. Immortal emperor." Zhu Yun's eyes suddenly widened. To be honest, he didn't know that the former owner of the immortal mansion was actually an immortal emperor. The emperor of the fairy world? His breathing suddenly stopped and he looked at Huang Longshu in disbelief. Yes, the master is the immortal emperor, haven't we told you? Huang Longshu said very easily. Zhu Yun suddenly smiled bitterly, you didn't tell me. What you always said was the master. It should be our negligence. After all, we all know the master too well. After all the elixirs looked at each other, Ziwanko said, so even Zhu Yun, master, can't achieve great success, let alone you. Don't say that we pour cold water on you. The Tao and laws contained in this Wuji sword art are too great. More. Zhu Yun silently accepted the facts subconsciously. Indeed, he was also in the process of practicing swordsmanship. It was just ordinary sword moves, and he didn't even use his spiritual power. He seemed to have collapsed. This feeling is like trying to master the state of chaos after dividing it into 5 parts and controlling each one too much. But when he thought that he had to give up such a powerful sword art, he still felt a little unwilling, so he asked, how far has the immortal emperor practiced before? Hong Yi spoke first and said, the last time we saw the master, he kept talking about how to win with any move, and if there is a sword in his heart, everything is a sword. Later, the master stopped practicing swords, but we all know, he can't make any more breakthroughs. Zhu Yun frowned slightly. There are tricks to win, but there are no tricks, he also realized. And if there is a sword in the heart, everything is a sword. It seems that he has also touched some thresholds. Otherwise, when he was in the Sword Mountain, he wouldn't have thrown away the black sword and made random moves with his bare hands. With every move, a villain appears. In other words, these moves also belong to the Wuji sword technique. I know, I'll try not to practice in the future. Zhu Yun sighed and returned to his human form with a somewhat lonely expression. This Wuji sword technique really brought me to the top and bottom again. At that time, he also said that the sword technique was funny. Now, I am the one who is funny. I can't laugh anymore. But not practicing the Wuji sword technique does not mean that Zhu Yun will no longer use the sword. How could he let go of the black sword he finally got? After waving his hands with all the elixirs, Zhu Yun returned to the cave. He put the sword control technique back and then left the Dao-glazed mirror. No matter what, he still had to go back and find out what caused the beast tide. It's so good, why is there such a large-scale beast tide? When something goes wrong, there must be a monster, and this is too abnormal. Regardless of whether it was only causing trouble in Yezhu, he felt that he couldn't stand by. You can fight all the way from Chuzhu, what if you go to Yunzhou again? You know, Yunzhou's spiritual power is poor, and there are more innocent low-level monks and mortals. Boom. As soon as he left the mirror, there was thunder in the sky. It actually rained. It was dark night, and thunder passed through the dark clouds and illuminated the sky. It was raining heavily, and the ground under Zhu Yun's feet was already muddy. But no matter how heavy the rain is, it will not get Zhu Yun wet. After his mind moved slightly, Zhu Yun flew towards the north. He had already taken some detours, all the way to the north, which was where the beast tide had been. Zhu Yun did not use the flying boat. The golden light of the flying boat was too conspicuous. Using his own spiritual power, he could get closer quietly through the night and rain. Moreover, even if there was a monster with a keen sense of smell, it would not be easy to spot him under the heavy rain. After flying nearly 100 miles, Zhu Yun landed in the hills where he met Zhu Feng. The rain was heavier here, and Zhu Yun saw at a glance that the 9 turns and 9 suns formation was still intact. Also, he did not forcefully break the formation at that time, so the formation would naturally stay here. Not knowing what he was thinking, Zhu Yun flew towards the formation and quickly broke into the formation. At this time, all the black energy in the array had dissipated. Presumably, Zhu Feng had not practiced magic skills, so naturally there would be no black energy. In addition to the withered corpses, There were also some half-dead foundation building monks in the formation. Zhu Yun frowned. It is better to say that they are alive than dead. He didn't pay much attention at that time, but looking at it now, he couldn't help but yell at Zhu Feng for his evil intentions. Every monk has his bones broken into pieces. Although he has a lifespan of hundreds of years in the foundation building stage, his body is not much stronger than that of a mortal. With things like this, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to survive long without Zhu Feng. How many evil things has this kid done? Looking at the way these people are dressed, they don't look like disciples of Wanjian Mountain. Zhu Yun frowned, but took out a bottle of energy-raising pills from his storage bag, and stepped forward to distribute one pill to each of them. Although the people in the foundation building stage cannot move, the spiritual energy in their bodies can still function to some extent. This essence-nourishing elixir is tantamount to giving them a chance to recover from a long drought. As the power of the medicine gradually dissolved, they frantically absorbed the power to repair their injuries. Everything is driven by instinct. With a strong desire to survive, under the influence of the nourishing pill, they first regain some of their sanity. But a single essence-nourishing pill is not enough to regenerate their broken bones. This will take at least half a year. But Zhu Yun is now a casual cultivator, and he has nowhere to go, so how can he accommodate them? While those in the foundation building period were beginning to heal, Zhu Yun also controlled the 9 turns and 9 suns formation, and after fine-tuning, he completely made the formation his own. After doing all this, someone finally spoke up. "Thank you, Senior, for your life-saving grace." As one person spoke, these foundation building monks also spoke one after another, thanking Zhu Yun. Unfortunately, they couldn't get up at all and could only use their spiritual senses to feel the huge pill-forming aura on Zhu Yun's body. "Why were you kidnapped by Zhu Feng?" Zhu Yun did not respond, but asked lightly. Hearing the words Zhu Feng, a monk gritted his teeth. "Back to seniors, we were originally disciples of various major sects in Yezhou, but for some reason we were kidnapped by Wang Jianshan and others and sent to Chuzhou to work as handymen. Later, Chuzhou underwent great changes, and monsters attacked us. Then he followed Elder Wang Jianshan back to Yezhou." Hearing the words Chuzhou's great changes again, Zhu Yun couldn't help but frowned again. But the monk continued speaking full of hatred, and Zhu Yun decided to wait until he finished speaking before asking. And when they finished speaking, Zhu Yun felt a hint of shame in his heart. He didn't expect that these monks could be said to be completely inseparable from him. At that time, he refined the giant sword and set off a huge turbulent flow of spiritual energy that overturned all the monks and fell from the air. How could they endure such a high altitude? You are lucky to be alive. But what happened next made Zhu Yun extremely angry. One is the indifference of the elders of Wanjian Mountain. The other one is that Zhu Feng kidnapped them all here for the purpose of practicing his magic skills. Granted, these guys had a terrible fall. But it was just a severed limb. Even if they were not treated on the spot and given some relief, they could still find some way to survive. Unexpectedly, Zhu Feng was cruel and smashed all the bones of their hands and feet. Just because I'm afraid these people will escape. Zhu Yun's eyes glowed with coldness. He accidentally hurt them, but Zhu Feng used them as living materials for cultivation. By the way, that boy Zhu Feng practices magic. When we were in Chuzhou, some people seemed to disappear from time to time. At that time, Jian Er said that they might be kidnapped by monsters. Now that I think about it, could it be that boy Zhu Feng? What the hell? As soon as these words came out, everyone agreed. Many people said that it seemed that the last person they saw before their companion guarding the mountain gate disappeared was Zhu Feng. Suddenly, Zhu Yun felt even more murderous intent. No matter how stupid he is, he can still guess the reason why Zhu Feng practices so fast. I thought it was brotherly love, but I didn't expect it to cause such trouble to the world. If we let him grow up, this kid will be in trouble. Zhu Yun's eyes were gloomy, and he regretted why he didn't kill him directly at that time. Xianxia rescued him, but I don't know if he survived. No. He can survive in the sea. This kid must be a person with excellent luck. Not only do you want to see a person alive, but you also want to see a corpse, at least you want to know from Xianxia whether he is dead or alive. Zhu Yun took a deep breath and took out 2 bottles of nourishing pills from his arms. After distributing them to everyone according to their injuries, he said, "You can stay here to recuperate with peace of mind. There is a formation here to protect you for 10 days. In 10 days, you should be able to fly with your weapon, right? Then you can find a safe place." After saying that, Zhu Yun kneaded the formation technique a few times, controlled the formation to last for 10 days, and then walked away. He decided to ignore the situation of the beast tide for the time being and go find Zhu Feng first. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 376. In the large formation, a group of monks were extremely silent. Because Zhu Yun fed them the essence nourishing pill again, they tried their best to refine the medicine to recover their injuries as much as possible. Zhu Yun also said that this formation only lasts 10 days. If they can't leave after 10 days, they will definitely die. After a few hours, they all refined the medicinal power. One of them said with gratitude, "I didn't expect that I would die and survive. I just don't know the name of the senior. When I recover from my injuries, I must follow him." That's right. Wang Jianshan has done many evil things. He killed our master and destroyed our section. He forced us into Wang Jianshan to be his disciples, but he didn't care about life or death. We can almost live and die together. We have the same experience, and we are saved by the senior. I wonder what you think? In my opinion, it is better to wait for 10 days to break, and we can go together. There is someone to take care of me. When I am completely recovered, I will find the senior to repay my life-saving grace. Agree. 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 They were originally the proud disciples of various major sects, and they were extremely arrogant. But Wanjian Mountain destroyed their pride and made them lose their Taoist ambition to continue cultivating immortals and becoming stronger. After another series of blows, he couldn't move and lay beside Zhu Feng waiting to die. Who would have thought? Zhu Yun was like a ray of light in the darkness, suddenly giving them hope of life. This kind of gratitude is self-evident. Daoxin also became strong again. You all agree, right? Now, everyone, cheer up. There is a secret realm in our Qingyuan sect that no one knows about, and it's not far from here. Why don't I wait there and go there? It turns out to be a fellow Taoist from Qingyuan sect. Okay, let's go there. It's better to be closer. The Qingyuan section, as far as I know, is the worst. The entire sect was destroyed. Yes, they were all destroyed. It was Wang Jianshan who did it. For a moment, the formation returned to silence again. Zhu Yun didn't know all this. He left the elixir behind to make up for some of the guilt in his heart. These monks can be said to be innocent. But the world of cultivating immortals is so cruel. All because they are too weak. Zhu Yun would not delay his own affairs just to save them. Do you want to say selfish? Zhu Yun admitted it. Zhu Feng is right, people are selfish and use each other. It's just that Zhu Yun thinks he can't do that. He just wants a clear conscience. Worthy of heaven and earth, worthy of Taoism. Now, his Taoist heart told him that Zhu Feng would die. Therefore, even if he followed Wanjian Mountain's 20 den-forming stage disciples, he would not hesitate to catch up. Even if he couldn't beat those pill-forming stages, he still wanted to expose Zhu Feng's magic skills to see if the people in Wanjian Mountain would still keep him. Of course, the premise of all this is that Zhu Feng is still alive. I wish Feng a good life. Under the escort of Xianxia. Also under the care of the other people in Wanjian Mountain. At the same time, thanks to the sudden thunderstorm, the bird demon was unable to continue chasing. From dawn to dusk, they traveled almost 3,000 miles. Just arrived at the border of Yezhu. Further east, they would head to Bingzhou. It is also a barren place for cultivating immortals. It's just that unlike Yunzhou's ground vein fractures, Bingzhou has always been like this. The environment is so bad that almost no monks go there. Hardly even mortals. If you go north. But they can go to Peepa Realm. At this time, they also had differences. What Jianyi means is that Wanjian Mountain is no longer there, and there is such a terrifying beast tide that they are almost unable to resist it. Moreover, we don't know if there will be a more powerful beast wave behind. There is no hope. Instead of staying here and fighting for your life, it is better to go to Peepa Realm. With their 20 core forming stages, as long as they don't offend the Yuanying ancestor, there's basically no big problem. But Jian said that Zhu Feng was too weak in the realm and would easily die if he went to the Peepa realm, so he wanted to cross Bingzhou and stay away from Yezhu. Even if the beast tide really came after him, he would still have time to escape. If no one objects, these people may go to Peepa realm. But someone spoke up, and it was Jian. Naturally, there were also several people who said they should not go to Peepa realm for the time being. Most of these are after the Ten of Swords, and their strength is no more than a group of elders in the middle stage of pill formation. Jianyi's face looked very ugly. Since he became the acting mountain master, this was the first time he encountered someone who disobeyed orders. Brother Yi, now that Shanman is no longer around, everyone has their own ambitions. From what I see, that's how it is. Jian-san sighed and said to Jianyi. In fact, they did not follow Jianyi blindly. When Wanjian Mountain is destroyed, people's hearts are actually scattered. But now there are two choices. Jianyi is the strongest and thoughtful. If he goes to the Peepa realm, he will not only survive, but he may also get a big opportunity. As long as one of them can break through the nascent soul stage, then they can truly gain a foothold in the Peepa realm. In that case, let's say goodbye. Jianyi didn't know what these people were thinking, but using force at this time would not help. Instead, it would most likely cause conflicts, thereby damaging his own strength. If the twisted melon is not sweet, then let's part ways. Then, see you later. Jianyi bowed his hands and said very seriously. No matter how dissatisfied he was, he would not show it on his face. Brother Yi, see you later. Jian also bowed his hands. The 7 or 8 people standing behind him followed and said goodbye to Jianyi. Then, Jianyi led Jian-san, Jian-si, and others to the north. Jian continued to go east. As long as they crossed Bingzhou, the sky would be free for birds to fly and the sea would be wide for fish to jump. They were more than 10 Jindan stage, and except for Yezhu and Chuzhu, no matter which state they were in, they were an unrivaled force. At dawn, the rain stopped, and Zuyun also chased here. He stopped. It was not that he knew there was a way to Peepa realm here, but at this time, he found that there was no trace of the beast tide here at all. In the dark night, accompanied by the sound of rain, he did not think of this. At this time, the sky was bright and the ground was clear at a glance. Strange, the beast tide didn't chase, or dispersed. Zuyun frowned and thought, and decided to return the same way. At the same time, the Lord of Naihuo City also suddenly opened his eyes. It's dawn, the rain has stopped, and it's time for my monsters to go out. As long as I kill all over the Ya realm and improve my control over the demon refining tower, I will go to Peeper Realm again. As he spoke, he touched an ancient-looking ring on his middle finger. In an instant, the demon refining tower flew out of it. If Tang Tiangang were here, he would definitely recognize that this was a Sumeru ring that could store things. There is no such thing in Yao Realm. Even in Peeper Realm, it is extremely rare. And this ring is what the black-clothed Yuanying gave to the Lord of Naihuo City. As the bronze door of the demon refining tower opened, countless bird monsters seemed to be a group of bats living in caves in the primitive mountains and forests that came out to look for food. Not long after, the bird monsters occupied the entire sky and flew towards the east. When the bird monsters flew away, the Lord of Naihuo City flew up lightly and followed. This time, he did not plan to release the rest of the monsters. First, the more monsters he released, the harder it would be for him to control them. Second, if he encountered thunder again, he would suffer a lot of losses. The monsters in the demon refining tower were not endless. One less monster died. He had mastered the method of controlling these monsters, but he had not yet learned to absorb monsters from the outside world. Therefore, the death of the first monster was equivalent to weakening his strength. Now that he had not encountered an opponent that was difficult to entangle, the Lord of Naihuo City would naturally not do this. The bird monster tide stretched for more than dozens of miles, which was enough to show how many there were. And these were only the monsters of the 5th level. As for the first 4 levels, they were all killed and sacrificed for blood sacrifice to refine the demon refining tower. The bird monsters went east, and Zuyun went west. When the sun was high, Zuyun met the bird monster tide unexpectedly. Why are these bird monsters coming now? Looking at the dark mass in the distance, Zuyun's breathing suddenly stagnated. He couldn't understand why he didn't run into Wang Jianshan and his men who were being chased. Now it seems that either the people of Wang Jianshan changed their route, or these bird monsters rested for a night. While thinking about it, the bird monsters also found Zuyun's location. The eyes of the Lord of Naihuo City, dozens of miles away, suddenly glowed. In the past few hours, they didn't encounter any living creatures at all, and they were already a little impatient. Let's have an appetizer first, let them see some blood. Through the control of the demon refining tower, he quickly gave instructions to these bird monsters. Instantly, the eyes of these bird monsters were red, and their speed suddenly increased, and they came towards Zuyun overwhelmingly. No, these bird monsters have become much faster. Zuyun only planned to beat Zufeng on this trip, and he didn't expect to encounter the beast tide first. He didn't want to entangle with these monsters at all, so he made a quick decision and quickly fled to the ground. Compared with flying, the thunder escape technique is now the correct way to escape. The energy consumption is low and the speed is not slow, which can allow him to hold on longer. As soon as he landed, Zuyun's mind moved. In the air, a flash of lightning flashed, and Zuyun appeared 200 steps away. However, those bird demons flying rapidly stopped suddenly. It seemed that they saw a scene that frightened them extremely. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 377. Zuyun did not notice the situation, but after he used several thunder escape techniques in succession and escaped 2 miles away, he found that there was no movement behind him. Looking back, he was surprised. The bird demons at the front fled back to the original path, but the bird demons behind did not know what happened and continued to rush forward. Seeing this, Zuyun could not help but stop and wanted to find out the clues. Obviously, these bird demons saw the fear that made them instinctively. I didn't do anything, just used the thunder escape technique, and didn't attack. Zuyun was full of doubts. When they first met, he killed so many bird demons, but there was no such abnormality. Instead, he ran away first, which scared these bird demons. And nothing happened around at this time. Zuyun stood on the ground for a long time, watching the bird demons quietly. Colliding with each other, many bird demons were accidentally injured and fell from the sky. After some time, the bird demon in the front was obviously unable to stop the tide of bird demons behind, and they began to rush towards Zuyun. Zuyun thought for a moment, then faced the bird demon and fled in the back direction. It was still the thunder escape technique. And this time, Zuyun clearly saw that the bird demon that rushed the fastest also stopped suddenly at the moment he used the escape technique. It was still the same as before. Is it related to the thunder escape technique? Zuyun couldn't help but open his mouth, and suddenly thought of the key. The thunder escape technique uses thunder spirit power. When he used the thunder escape technique, although the thunder spirit power was very weak, generally speaking, bird demons have excellent eyesight, and perhaps they can also see the thunder spirit power that flashed when he fled. Thinking of this, Zuyun pondered for a while, and took out a gathering heaven thunder talisman from the storage bag. While these bird demons were colliding with each other, he quickly locked the position of the gathering heaven thunder talisman. Get up! With a low shout, Zuyun crushed the thunder talisman. Boom! As the gathering heavenly thunder talisman turned into ashes, a barely perceptible thunder spirit rushed to the sky, triggering the thunder. In a flash, thunder roared, and a thunder column as thick as a bucket in the sky fell into the flock of birds. Apart from that, there was no sound. Because the bird demons hit by the thunder directly turned into blood foam. They couldn't even scream. Zuyun's pupils shrank, and he was suddenly overjoyed. It turned out that these monsters were afraid of thunder. When he fled from Wanjian Mountain before, it seemed that there was a thunderstorm. So these bird demons hid. And the thunderstorm lasted all night, and they couldn't move forward at all, and let the people of Wanjian Mountain escape safely. In this way, they have already fled very far, and I am afraid that I can't catch up with them for a while. In that case, I will kill you bird demons first. Zuyun stretched out his hand and spread his 5 fingers, and the black sword was summoned directly into his hand. Then, his mind moved slightly, and the chaotic power in the seed quickly transformed into thunder spiritual power. Then, he floated into the air again, stood in the void, waiting for these bird demons to rush up and die. After a few breaths, the chaos caused by the Jushin Leifu slowly calmed down. Although these bird demons are not smart, they are not afraid of the thunder anymore. Under the control of the Lord of Naihuo City, the order they received was to kill all living things. There was only Zuyun here, and these bird demons rushed over without hesitation. Voila! 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 The bird demons flapped their wings, bringing up a strong wind. The red demon eyes locked on Zuyun. Those who rushed to the front planned to tear Zuyun to pieces with their sharp teeth and claws. Zuyun stood still in the air, his clothes fluttering. But he was not afraid at all, and slowly raised his long sword. When the fastest bird demon was only more than 10 feet away from him, he stood up and stabbed. Sword chi is released. In Zuyun's mind, he thought of using thunder spirit power to condense sword energy, so as to kill these bird demons with one blow. Unexpectedly, as soon as he recited the sword moves, his mind couldn't help but think that he used the moves of Wuji Swordju. The sword has been drawn and cannot be retracted. The purple sword energy as wide as several people burst out, but before hitting the bird demon, these thunder spirit powers quickly split into countless lightning rays. Each lightning ray hit a bird demon. In a moment, countless bird demons fell from the sky and fell to the ground one after another. Thunder spirit power has an extremely powerful restraining effect. It is a one-hit kill for these bird demons. Zuyun frowned slightly, and the sword energy release changed again. No, it should be said that this belongs to the Wuji sword technique. According to those spiritual medicines, the Wuji sword technique is a sword technique in the immortal world, and he cannot control it. But when he used it at this time, he didn't feel anything wrong at all. In fact, it achieved such a good effect. Could it be that those spiritual medicines made a mistake? Zhu Yun thought for a moment, but threw this idea out of his mind first. These spiritual medicines seemed to be knowledgeable. But it seems that after they entered the immortal mansion, they never went out again. And all the knowledge comes from their previous master, the immortal emperor. A sword that even the sword emperor cannot practice to perfection? But I didn't think about practicing to perfection at this time. As long as the sword technique can be useful to me, that's all. Suddenly, Zhu Yun suddenly understood. For example, when he was practicing the sword control technique, he was most familiar with the sword energy release, and he only knew the other sword moves. He didn't use them much in actual fighting. Sometimes, he even used the most basic movements to attack. So, only the suitable one is the best. What perfection do you want? Zhu Yun was open-minded, and threw everything out of his mind. In his eyes, only those monsters were left. Wuji sword technique. All the bird monsters in front were killed, and within the attack range, the surviving bird monsters had already been heartbroken. They instinctively wanted to escape, but behind them, there was a black mass of countless bird monsters. How could they know what was happening in front? They pushed forward all the way, leaving these bird monsters with nowhere to escape. Seeing that the bird monster beast tide stopped again, Zhu Yun laughed and rushed forward. A move appeared in his mind involuntarily. Sweep the army. This is a move in the sword technique, but the instinct of the body makes Zhu Yun feel that it is most appropriate at this time. When he was several feet away, Zhu Yun swept across. Woo! The black sword brought up the sword wind, and at the same time a half-moon-shaped sword energy, as he swept horizontally, formed in front of the sword tip, shot out, and rushed towards the bird monster beast tide. Wherever it went, the bird monster was cut into two pieces, died immediately, and fell to the ground. Zhu Yun suddenly accelerated, followed the half-moon lightning sword energy, and rushed directly into the bird monster group. As he went deeper, the bird monsters rushed towards Zhu Yun and surrounded him in an instant. Ha ha ha! Zhu Yun laughed wildly, holding the sword with both hands, spinning rapidly. The spiritual power in the body rushed to the black sword frantically. Zi La! In the blink of an eye, the black sword suddenly turned into a purple sword. These purple rays were all transformed by thunder spirit power. They kept jumping on the sword body, as if they had their own consciousness. As long as they got close to the bird demon, they would suddenly rush out. At such a close distance, the bird demon could not dodge at all. With thunder spirit power in his body, Zhu Yun was like a man in the bird demon beast tide. Wherever he went, countless bird demons would be shot down. In the sky, it seemed like a rain of bird demons. But for this bird demon beast tide, it was a drop in the bucket. Because the number of bird demons was really too many. In the distance, the board lord of Naihuo City finally found something unusual. If a few bird demons died, he would not notice anything. But when Zhu Yun's killing was going on, large groups of bird demons fell, and he finally found that his control seemed to have become a little easier. Of course, with fewer bird demons, he would need to spend less energy. Someone is slaughtering my monsters. He suddenly widened his eyes, and his eyes were shining. Could it be the group of immortals in Wanjian Mountain? Go and see. If they can kill bird monsters at will, I guess I have to release the monsters of the 6th floor. Muttering to himself, the lord of Naihuo City quickly flew towards the center of the bird monster tide. After flying for about a cup of tea, his face became much gloomier. Because Zhu Yun's killing speed was too fast. However, he had not yet killed the center of the monster tide. Damn it, I must trap him in the monster refining tower. The lord of Naihuo City roared in his heart. The more monsters, the more help he would get. But now the speed of the monsters decreasing is getting faster and faster, which makes him furious. After flying for a few more breaths, he finally found that countless bird monsters were falling not far in front of him. In the air, the demon power and the bloody air were mixed together. The bird demons were in groups, as if the sky was pierced, and a black waterfall flowed down. He quickly released his spiritual consciousness and rushed over there. Early stage of Jindan. When he found Zuyun, who was killing the bird demons, he was a little distracted. There was only one early stage of Jindan here. But the speed of killing the bird demons was so terrifying. Boy, die! The Lord of Naihuo City shouted angrily, resounding through the sky, and rushed over personally. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 378. Not good, late Jindan Peak. Before the Lord of Naihuo City came, Zuyun was in the mood to kill, and the black sword turned into a thunder sword. He used every move at will. Because they were all practiced when he was on Jianshan Mountain. The first sword he drew was in line with the current situation. When the huge spiritual consciousness instantly locked onto his body, Zuyun was immediately awakened. He's coming. Zuyun slashed at the bird demon with a sword, and his body soared into the sky, climbing to a higher height again. He found that the spiritual consciousness was slightly below, and the best choice was to quickly get away from the bird demon beast tide and then use the pursuit of these bird demons to form a barrier. As he expected, the vacuum zone created by his killing was filled with bird demons, and it was like a huge wave surging from the Black Sea, rushing towards Zuyun. At this time, Zuyun did not dare to continue the fight, but quickly moved away from here. But at this moment, an endless loud noise sounded, and these bird demons not only stopped chasing, but also returned downwards. He was slightly stunned, and guessed that the late Jindan controlled these bird monsters, thus destroying his plan. However, he could control such a huge wave of bird monsters. This ability is beyond imagination, and it is impossible for him to stay here. Zuyun made a prompt decision. While these bird monsters stopped attacking him, he rushed to the edge of the bird monster tide and then fell to the ground. But as soon as he got below the bird monster tide, he saw an extremely shocking scene. He saw a man in black standing in the void with a stern look. Next to him, there was a black tower that made him very familiar. All the bird monsters were rushing towards the bronze door of the black tower. Demon Refining Tower. Zuyun couldn't help but exclaimed. In an instant, this voice attracted the attention of the Lord of Naihuo City. Boy, dare to ruin my good thing? Die! The Lord of Naihuo City shot his eyes at Zuyun like a sharp sword, and at the same time rushed towards Zuyun. Feeling the huge and boundless spiritual power, Zuyun was terrified and didn't dare to stay here anymore. He fell to the ground at a high speed. Only when he reaches the ground, he will have the opportunity to use the thunder escape technique. No matter how strong this Naihuo City Lord is, he will not be able to catch up with him. And his monsters are also afraid of thunder spirit power. In this case, unless he splits himself, he will definitely be able to escape alive. Seeing Zuyun so straightforward, the eyes of the Naihuo City Lord suddenly condensed. In his opinion, Zuyun is a dead man. However, he did not want Zuyun to die peacefully. Killed so many of my bird monsters, and saw the demon refining tower, he must be trapped in the demon refining tower. The Naihuo City Lord quickly chased after him, but they were all in the Jindan stage, and the speed would not be much different. Seeing that he could hardly catch up, the Naihuo City Lord divided some of his mind and controlled some bird monsters to go around Zuyun. But he didn't know that Zuyun just wanted to land. Although these bird monsters moved, they did not pose any threat to Zuyun at all. What he didn't know was that even if he could surround Zuyun, Zuyun still had a way to escape. As soon as Zuyun landed on the ground, he moved his mind and used the thunder escape technique. His figure flashed and he just escaped from the encirclement of the bird monsters. While the Lord of Naihuo City was still in mid-air, Zuyun seized the opportunity and suddenly used a sword energy to release it. In an instant, all these bird monsters were killed by Zuyun. Good boy, you actually used thunder spirit power. No wonder you can kill these bird monsters. The Lord of Naihuo City exclaimed. He has lived for hundreds of years and has never seen a cultivator with thunder spirit roots. It seems that this kid cannot be locked up in the demon refining tower, he must be killed. A thunder spirit cultivator in the early stage of Jindan can be unrestrained in the tide of bird monsters and beasts. If he is allowed to grow up again, I am afraid that he will just restrain himself. Thinking of this, the Lord of Naihuo City quickly took back the demon refining tower. And those bird monsters that did not have time to enter the demon refining tower continued to rush towards Zuyun under his control. As long as Zuyun kills, he can at least get closer to Zuyun. Who would have thought? As soon as he got the demon refining tower, Zuyun used the thunder escape technique again. The Lord of Naihuo City was shocked again. Before, he was not fully focused. Although he saw Zuyun escaping to the distance, he did not pay too much attention. But at this time, with full concentration, he found that the speed of the thunder escape technique was much faster than his full strength flight. He knew that if he did not find a way to suppress it, he would be afraid of letting him escape from death. The Lord of Naihuo City had a gloomy face. While controlling the bird demon to continue chasing, he was thinking quickly in his mind. It seems that only by offering a big demon can this kid stay. With his mind concentrated, the Lord of Naihuo City silently recited a formula. This formula took him 3 breaths of time, and Zuyun was already a mile away. But as the formula was finished, the bronze door of the demon refining tower opened, and a huge demon power surged out of it. The bird demons that were stopped by the lightning spirit power flashed by the thunder escape technique were instantly knocked to the ground by the impact of these demonic powers, and huddled on the ground, trembling. Some were even scared to the point of digging their heads into the sand on the ground. It seems that if you can't see it, you won't be afraid. With the sound of a dragon roar, a giant dragon with golden light rushed out. The dragon had horns on its head, 4 legs and 5 claws. As its entire body drilled out of the bronze door, its body began to grow larger. The body is 7 or 8 feet long, with huge demonic power and majesty. Fine beads of sweat appeared on the forehead of the Lord of Naihuo City. This is one of the 12 demon kings in the demon refining tower. Go to me. Controlling those bird demon beasts, no matter how many there are, the Lord of Naihuo City is also at ease. But at this time, just one golden dragon demon king made the Lord of Naihuo City almost spend all his mind. At that time, when refining the demon refining tower, he killed tens of thousands of foundation building period, countless 4th level demon beasts, and sacrificed all his men, so that he could use the demon refining tower for himself. But to what extent he can use it, only the Lord of Naihuo City knows. The upper limit is that he can only control one demon king at a time. And it's still very reluctant. The golden dragon looked at the Lord of Naihuo City meaningfully, and then cast his eyes to the distance, locking on Zuyun. Big demon. Feeling the gaze coming from behind like a physical object, Zuyun looked back in shock. Even though they were so far away, he could still see the sharp gaze of the golden dragon clearly. Thinking of the rumors in Chuzhu, there is no doubt that this golden dragon must be the big demon in the demon refining tower. Before he turned around, Zuyun saw the golden dragon's body suddenly turned into a residual image. When he came to his senses, the demon's claws had already grabbed his head. Run! Zuyun didn't dare to use the thunder spirit power to test whether the golden dragon would be restrained. He used the thunder escape technique without hesitation, and his figure disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already 200 steps away. He was panting and still in shock. While the golden dragon was stunned, he used the thunder escape technique again and continued to escape to the distance. The speed of this golden dragon was far beyond his own. How could he dare to stay here? At the same time, he was extremely calm. I am afraid that I will not be able to kill these monsters. Yezu will also suffer some disasters. The Lord of Naihuo City has this demon refining tower in his hand, no wonder he dared to kill all the way from Chuzhu to Yezu. He can even control such a big monster, and it is at the peak of the late Jindan stage. What else can he do? Kill him. Wait, kill him. Suddenly, Zhu Yun's eyes lit up. It's not that he doesn't have the strength to kill the peak of the late Jindan stage. Whether it is the Jushin Leifu, the self-destruct formation, or the chaos palm that fights to the death. But, you need to find the right opportunity. Moreover, this killing is not so simple. The Lord of Naihuo City is not a dead man standing there motionless. Not to mention, there is also a golden dragon. Just like just now, if I was a little slower, I would be crushed into meat paste by the dragon's claws. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun couldn't help but look at the Lord of Naihuo City. It doesn't matter if you don't look at it, but once you look at it, you will be stunned. He didn't move. Why didn't he follow the golden dragon to attack me? Just as the thought came up, another golden light flashed across Zhu Yun's eyes. Oh no, the golden dragon is chasing me. Zhu Yun didn't dare to continue observing, and quickly used the thunder escape technique. But this time, he fled in the direction of the Lord of Naihuo City. The closer you are, the clearer you can see. After dodging the attack of the golden dragon, Zhu Yun once again confirmed that the Lord of Naihuo City was indeed standing in the same place. This time, he did not stay, but quickly fled to the distance. At the same time, he kept thinking in his heart. If this is true, he really has a chance. However, he not only has to ensure that he kills the Lord of Naihuo City, but also needs to be able to escape the pursuit of the golden dragon after killing him. In this case, the Chaos Palm is not suitable. After the Chaos Palm's spiritual power is exhausted, he can't escape at all. It is impossible to use a flying boat. Because the speed of the golden dragon is far faster than his own, it will naturally be faster than the flying boat. Self-destruct array. This needs to be set up in advance, and it just happens that the Lord of Naihuo City stands in the array. But this coincidence is too great. What if he is discovered? This will let the Lord of Naihuo City know that he wants to kill him, and he will be more careful. So, gathering heavenly thunder talisman? Zhu Yun fled while reaching into his arms. There are only more than 10 gathering heavenly thunder talismans left now. This number is far from enough. Although the gathering heavenly thunder talisman is strong, if only one hits, it is impossible to kill. At least 2. But Zhu Yun dare not guarantee that he can still be accurate at a critical moment. At the same time, he dare not guarantee that the Lord of Naihuo City is really unable to move. With his strength, it may not be difficult to avoid a few thunders. And what if he calls the golden dragon back to help him resist the gathering heavenly thunder talisman? Therefore, only a large number of gathering heavenly thunder talismans can greatly increase the success rate. Thinking of this, Zhu Yun decided to use the talisman to kill the Lord of Naihuo City. But the problem came. He didn't have the talisman paper. And at the moment, the most important thing is still to avoid the pursuit of the golden dragon. Zhu Yun put aside the problem of the talisman and fled quickly to the distance. Kill him, kill him. The Lord of Naihuo City kept giving instructions to the golden dragon through the demon refining tower. In fact, the golden dragon was escaped by Zhu Yun several times at this time, and he was also very angry. As a demon king, he was comparable to the existence of the nascent soul stage, but he couldn't do anything to a person in the early stage of the core formation stage. The arrogant self-esteem made it unacceptable. But it is true that Zhu Yun's thunderbolt escape technique is ghostly and elusive. Even if it uses demonic sense to lock Zhu Yun, it is useless. After chasing for more than 10 miles, Zhu Yun escaped farther and farther, so he had no choice but to return to the Lord of Naihuo City. "I can't catch you, let me go back." The golden dragon actually spoke human words. A huge drop of sweat flowed down the forehead of the Lord of Naihuo City. It seemed that as long as he reacted, the golden dragon would attack him instantly. "Go back." As soon as the voice fell, the bronze door opened. The golden dragon went back directly, and the surrounding demonic power disappeared without a trace. Ah! A feeling of powerlessness rose from the center of Naihuo City, and he roared like venting. First, Zuyun slaughtered his bird demon, causing him to lose a lot. Secondly, a big demon not only despised him, but also disobeyed his orders. "When I master the demon refining tower, I will definitely take out your dragon tendons to make my belt." The chest of the Lord of Naihuo City rose and fell violently, and he calmed down after a while. "Only by killing more creatures and absorbing more blood and flesh vitality can I improve my control over the demon refining tower. As for that kid, let him live for a while." In the distance, Zuyun was relieved when he found that the golden dragon was no longer chasing. He turned around and fled to the south, intending to find a suitable place and then enter the Dao glass mirror to have a good rest. An hour later, Zuyun found a sect force. And at the foot of the mountain, there was even a market. "Don't I lack the materials for the intermediate talisman? Prepare 1,000 Jushin lay talismans. If this still can't kill the Lord of Naihuo City, I can only run to the Peeper Realm." Zuyun touched the spirit stone in the storage bag, and then walked towards the market. Just as he approached, a cultivator hurriedly came to meet him. It can be seen that Zuyun is in the Jindan stage, and he couldn't help but smile and said, "I don't know where you are from, senior, and what do you want to do in my Zaofa sect? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 379. Zhaofu Sect. Zuyun's eyes suddenly lit up. "I thought that this mountain gate was just an ordinary market, and this place was also an ordinary sect. But I didn't expect it to be the Zaofa sect." The Zaofa sect rebelled from the 7-star gate and became the lackey of Wanjian Mountain. It seems that Wanji Unshan came back in a hurry. First, he encountered the stolen sword, and then encountered the beast tide, so the Zaofa sect didn't know what happened to Wanji Unshan. Moreover, during the Danja period when Wanjian Mountain massacred all the sects in Yezhu, because the Zaofa sect was a vassal, it was not damaged at all. The result is that you are cheap. Ha ha ha, I've heard for a long time that the Zaofa sect is the best in the entire Yezhu in terms of talismans, and the talisman papers you make are also of excellent quality, so I wanted to come over and buy some talisman papers and draw some for fun." Zuyun said proudly. He has reached the elixir formation stage and can consider himself a real person. "Senior, coming here is my blessing to recruit the Fu section. Why don't you join the sect and sit down, and I will introduce you to our sect leader. It's easy to talk, easy to talk. I'm done." Zuyun was also arrogant. Good talisman paper can also increase the power of talismans. Although it is extremely subtle, it is better than nothing. Furthermore, after entering the talisman sect, you might be able to obtain talisman paper and materials for drawing talismans without the need for spiritual stones. Why not? Senior, please. Our sect leader will definitely welcome you. Under the leadership of this foundation building period, Zuyun passed through the city unimpeded and climbed up the stairs. The pit market was bustling with activity, with some casual cultivators in the foundation building stage purchasing various talismans. Zuyun couldn't help but feel doubtful. The talisman skills he learned from Sun Suanhua were in the same line as the Zaofa sect. But how can these kinds of talismans be displayed in a market of this scale? Along the way, Did he sell more than the 10 kinds of talismans he had learned? Senior, you seem to be very interested in the talismans for sale. If you need them, can I take some from the warehouse and give them to you? Zuyun was surprised for a while and said, can you still give away the talisman you brought to sell? Ha ha ha, said the foundation building stager with a smile, Senior, we don't have many other talisman sects, but we have many talismans. The ones sold in the market are all drawn by ordinary disciples during practice. It's okay to throw them away. It's a waste, so just sell it to some casual cultivators in exchange for some spiritual stones. Zuyun was overjoyed and said, so that's it? I wonder which talismans from your Zaofa sect are the best-selling ones. Senior, the best-selling one is of course the Fire Phoenix Talisman. The Fire Phoenix Talisman is so powerful and fast, like the Fire Phoenix Talisman drawn by our sect master, even those who are at the peak of the late stage of pill formation can only retreat. Zuyun has never learned the Fire Phoenix Talisman, and Sun Suanhua has never mentioned it. Obviously he doesn't know how to do it. But having said that, it seems that I can't draw any high-level talismans. The Qi refining stage corresponds to the primary talisman, the foundation building stage corresponds to the intermediate talisman, and the pill forming stage naturally corresponds to the high-level talisman. This move of Fuzong is really the right one. It seems that we have to find a way to get some advanced talisman painting techniques from the Zaofa sect. Although he has the fragment of the heavenly talisman in his hand, the power of the first sky-gathering thunder talisman is extremely impressive, and the subsequent talisman will definitely be even more powerful. But when using the Wuji sword technique, Zuyun had already understood a truth. The right one is the best. Of course it is not bad to have many skills but not to overwhelm oneself, and to know more talismans. Just like now, in addition to the heaven-gathering thunder talisman, he uses the Firebird talisman the most, as well as the Earth Armor talisman. In critical situations, the Earth Armor talisman can also give him a chance to breathe. Is it so powerful? Zuyun pretended to be surprised. In fact, his Firebird talisman can also achieve the effect of the Fire Phoenix talisman after it is charged with fire spirit power using the power of chaos. But if it is the Fire Phoenix talisman, it may not be able to kill the nascent soul stage. Of course. The foundation building period patted his chest and said, our sect master dares to be second in the talisman line, but no one dares to be first. You know, people from Wanjian Mountain often come to buy talismans from us. Zuyun secretly laughed, Wanjian Shan bought it? I'm afraid you didn't offer it to Wanjian Mountain. After walking through several wide mountain roads, Zuyun came to a large hall. Senior, I will go and report to the sect master later. Zuyun nodded, and saw the foundation establishment stage knocking on the door, and then said loudly, report to the sect master, there is a senior from the pill formation stage coming to visit. Please. A majestic voice suddenly came from inside the house, and the palace door opened immediately. Zuyun was not polite and walked straight into the hall. Just as he crossed the threshold, a figure suddenly flashed into his eyes. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect fellow Taoist to be so young. I don't know what to call him. Zuyun subconsciously said, my surname is Chen, and my last name is a Chinese character. It turns out to be fellow Daoist Chen. At such a young age, he is already in the early stage of forming pills. I really admire Fu. Please take a seat. After saying that, he turned sideways and stretched his hand back, asking Zuyun to follow him. Zuyun nodded slightly, with a smile on his face, and heard the sect leader say, I'll pay you a chapter. I've grown a lot older than fellow Daoist Chen. If you don't mind it, you can call me Brother Fu. Zuyun secretly thought in his heart, this chapter of strength is also in the late stage of pill formation, but he is so warm to me, it seems, he is either a traitor or a thief. Otherwise, why would he, the majestic leader of a sect, be like this? However, now he has confidence and is not afraid of what Fuzhang will do. He came here just to get some talisman materials and advanced talisman painting techniques, so he left secretly to avoid the chance that the Lord of Backfire City would come over with the demon refining tower. Brother Chen, please sit down. Guiding Zuyun to the head of the hall, Fu Zhangjiang asked Zuyun to sit down very politely. Then he asked, where did fellow Daoist Chen come from? Did he come to our Zaofa sect to buy some talismans? Coming. Zuyun squinted his eyes and suddenly remembered that there was almost no pill formation period in Yeazhu. In this case, this chapter is about finding out where I came from. If I were in the pill forming stage of Yeazhu, he might have killed me in order to please Wanji Unshan. Thinking of Fu Zhangzhang's motive, Zuyun laughed and said, I'm not afraid of Brother Fu's jokes. Chen comes from the Wild Sea. Because he admires the outstanding people of Yeazhu and is the center of the entire Ya realm, he specially traveled across the ocean and clouds. When Zhou arrived here, he passed by Gazong and saw that there were talismans for sale in the market outside the mountain gate, so he came to take a look. Unexpectedly, he was seen by Gazong's disciples and introduced Chen to you. Fu Zhang was stunned on the spot, and after a while he said, Brother Chen, you actually came up from the Wild Sea. Zuyun smiled and nodded. If he wanted to ask further, he could only make it up at will. But fortunately, Fu Zhangji breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, and a little sparkle disappeared from his eyes. Zuyun's guess was correct. This was what Fu Zhangjiang thought after knowing that it was the pill formation period. In fact, the same is true for the person who led the way during the foundation building period. In other words, in the entire Yeazhu, except for their Zaofa sect who survived due to their relationship with Wanjian Mountain, no force in the entire Yeazhu province still has the core formation stage left. Brother Chen, when it comes to talismans, our talisman recruiting sect is the most comprehensive place. Which talismans do you want? It's just, the high-end talismans in this sect are very expensive. He had been so warm just now, but after knowing that Zuyun was not from Yeazhu, Fu Zhangjiang also became slightly colder. But Zuyunhun didn't care and said with a smile, Brother Fu, I don't know what talismans your sect has, why don't you introduce them all? As for spiritual stones, I don't have many. After all, the Wild Sea is too poor. However, there must be something in me that Brother Fu is interested in. Oh! Fu Zhang's eyes lit up. Everyone was in the Dan formation stage and would definitely not talk nonsense. So, does that mean this kid has a rare talisman? Fu Zhangjiang laughed and said, Brother Chen, don't be so pretentious and let me see you. It doesn't matter whether the spirit stone is not a spiritual stone. The main thing is that I want to get to know Brother Chen well. Ha ha ha, easy to say. Zuyun laughed loudly and said, Brother, please come with me. After that, Zuyun stood up and walked out of the house. When he knew that this place was the Zaofa sect, Zuyun had already made up his mind. There is no need to take out the talisman I learned from Sun Suanhua. Therefore, he wants to use the Heaven Gathering Thunder talisman. Fu Zhangjiang followed Zuyun out of the main hall and heard Zuyun say, Brother, take a look, how about my talisman? As soon as he finished speaking, Zuyun took out a Heaven Gathering Thunder talisman and threw it out suddenly. Boom! A thunderbolt fell in an instant and directly hit the open space between the halls. Dust was flying, gravel was flying, and the breath of thunder power passing through the air made his expression freeze instantly. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 380. After a while, he exclaimed, how can this intermediate talisman produce such great power? He is also a master of talismans, how could he not see the level of this Jushin Li talisman? But he didn't know that the Jushin Li talisman was so powerful because the spiritual power used by Zuyun Chongling was the thunder spiritual power transformed from the chaotic power. The pure thunder spiritual power attracted the thunder, so the power was naturally so. Zuyun turned his head with a smile and said, Brother Fu, although this talisman is an intermediate talisman, you also saw that it has a Jindan stage attack. Do you know what this means? Fu Yazang took a deep breath. How could he not know? Intermediate talismans can be used normally in the foundation building stage. If he can master the drawing method of the Jushin Li talisman, then even in the foundation building stage, there is a possibility of killing the Jindan stage in the sect. In this way, he will surely be able to break away from the control of Wanjian Mountain and become another major force in Yeazhu. Why is Wanjian Mountain so strong? Because they have many Jindan stage. But in terms of Jindan stage, their Fuzong is not comparable to Wanjian Mountain now. At that time, Wanjian Ren's soul card was shattered, and all the foundation building disciples scattered like birds and beasts. How could he not know about such a big event? Even if his disciples were not strong enough, if the mountain gate was closed, all the disciples would focus on drawing the talisman. Fu Yazang's breathing became rapid. He suppressed his voice and said to Zuyun, Brother Chen, I didn't expect that there would be such a terrifying talisman in the Savage Sea. As long as you teach me how to draw the talisman, I will let you sit on the position of deputy leader, under one person and above 10,000 people. Zuyun smiled and shook his head, tactfully refused, and said, Brother, I am not interested in this, otherwise why would I come to Yeazhu? What do you mean? Fu Yazang was stunned. To be honest, he really wanted to attract Zuyun to the Zaofa sect. First, Zuyun was also in the Jindan stage. Second, just by looking at this Jushin Li talisman, it can be seen that Zuyun's talisman drawing skills are extremely strong. For their Zaofa sect to compete with Wanjian Mountain in the future, it will also be a great help. But Zuyun refused. He was not surprised, but felt that Zuyun was not attracted. After thinking for a moment, Fu Yazang said, Brother Chen, so you want to go to Peeper Realm? Zuyun looked up and looked into the distance, then nodded. Fu Yazang hurriedly said, Brother Chen, Peeper Realm is full of Yuanying. If you go there, what if you meet some arrogant and unreasonable ancestors? Wouldn't this 100 years of cultivation be ruined? Zuyun smiled and said, So I came here to discuss with you, brother. Can I change my Tianli talisman to some suitable talisman drawing method? Brother Fu, I can only draw this kind of Tianli talisman, and I don't have anything to show. If you really don't like it, then I have to say goodbye. Fu Yazang was silent. Zuyun seemed polite, but he also forced him to the point where he had no choice. And Zuyun also completely grasped his weakness. This method of drawing is stored in Zuyun's mind. Unless he has the soul-searching method that only the Yuanying ancestors can use, it is impossible to get it. In desperation, Fu Yazang had to say, Brother Chen, you are joking. Brother, don't you only have this method of drawing talismans here? I just don't know if you like it. As he said that, he turned around and entered the hall. Zuyun was excited and hurried to follow. He knew that Fu Yazang had let him control it. The two sat opposite each other at the head of the hall, with a round table in the middle. Fu Yazang took out a booklet from his arms, and the 4 words Talisman Collection were written on the cover. And in the corner of the book cover, there were 3 small words. 7-Star Gate. Zuyun glanced at it, then retracted his gaze and looked at Fu Yazang and said, Brother Fu, this talisman collection, could it be that it records all the talisman making methods of your sect? Fu Yazang smiled bitterly and said, Of course, but this talisman is an heirloom of our Zaofa sect, and cannot be given to Brother Chen. But Brother Chen can freely learn all the talismans on it. Zuyun wanted to take the talisman collection, but it was obviously not appropriate. So he said, Brother Fu, I don't know how long it will take to learn talismans. I just want to go to Peeper Realm as soon as possible. I'm afraid that if I learn, I will waste a lot of time here. How about this, I will teach you how to draw the Jushin Lei talisman, and you will also teach me the talismans I need on it. How about it? Fu Yazang actually wanted to keep Zuyun as much time as possible. Unexpectedly, Zuyun still said it openly. No choice, so he had to agree. So he said, Brother Chen, take a look at it. If there is any talisman you want to learn, I will arrange it for you. Thank you, Brother Fu. Zuyun laughed and took the talisman collection in front of him. He opened the first page and saw the introduction of the Fireball talisman. He thought that he knew all the elementary and intermediate talismans, so it would be a waste of time to read them again, so he just turned to the last page. Sure enough, as he guessed, there were 5 talismans of the 5 elements. He glanced at it casually. There were only 5 advanced talismans. Flipping forward, he saw the sound transmission talisman, which was an intermediate talisman. Zuyun flipped through the entire book of talismans again, and he was interested in only 5 high-level talismans. He said to Zhang Yi, Brother, I will exchange this talisman of gathering heaven with you, and I don't want the other talismans. I'd like to exchange some materials for drawing talismans with you. How about that? Fu Zhang said quickly, Easy to say, easy to say. I have plenty of materials and stuff. He originally thought that Zuyun would offer him a lot of spiritual stones. Because at this moment, Zuyun had always had the upper hand, and he was still thinking about whether to kill Zuyun by force after he handed over the drawing method of the Thunder Gathering Talisman. If Zuyun could be easily satisfied, he wouldn't have to be. So, 500 copies of high-level materials and 500 copies of mid-level materials, brother, he said, deliberately pretending to be cool. Of course, the more mid-level materials, the better. Ha ha ha, Brother Chen, you are so polite. In this way, I will prepare 1,000 copies of the advanced materials for you, and I will prepare 10,000 copies of the intermediate materials for you. What do you think? Not to mention, most of the talismans are in the foundation building stage, and he can get out not to mention 10,000 or 100,000 intermediate level materials. Zuyun was secretly angry. It seemed that his price was too low. However, 1,000 copies is enough. Since there can be many more, the more the better. The Heaven Gathering Thunder Talisman was relatively important at the moment, so Zuyun gave up on asking for more high-level materials and instead asked for intermediate ones. Then thank you so much, Brother Fu. By the way, brother, please help me prepare. Brother, I will now prepare for you the drawing method of the Heaven Gathering Thunder Talisman. Okay, okay. Brother, wait here for a moment. Brother, come as soon as you go. Fu Zhang was in a good mood and quickly left the hall and went to the warehouse in person. Zuyun, however, glanced at the encyclopedia of talismans on the table from the corner of his eyes. He felt a little entangled in his heart and put away the encyclopedia of talismans. After all, this is my master's thing. After thinking for a moment, Zuyun decided to divert his attention so that Fu Zhang would not notice. He took out 10 Jushin Thunder talismans and placed them on the table. Then he took out a pen and paper and listed the detailed Jushin Thunder talisman on it. How to draw the Thunder talisman. The reason why he was willing to take out this talisman as exchange capital was that no one except him could make the Jushin Lei talisman achieve the power he used. Therefore, he had no scruples at all. After about touching a stick of incense, Fu Zhang rushed back in a hurry. The first time he glanced at the table, he felt as if something was missing. Zuyun's heart tightened, and he quickly spread the 10 Heaven Gathering Thunder talismans on the table, and said with a smile, Brother, you are so generous, so I can't be stingy. Look, I only have more than 10 left, so give them to me 10 of you. Sure enough, Fu Zhang's eyes were immediately attracted by the complicated runes, and his eyes were gleaming, and he could no longer move his eyes away. What a mysterious painting method, what a subtle rune pattern. He subconsciously took his hand and completely forgot about the encyclopedia of talismans. Zuyun, while feeling relieved, smiled and said, "Brother, where are the materials I want?" "Here, here. Brother, take a look for yourself, I will study the heaven-gathering thunder talisman first." Fu Zhangji took out the white paper written by Zuyun from the table again, his eyes moved back and forth, and his mind was already immersed in it. "Thank you, bro." Zuyun was overjoyed. He put his spiritual sense into the storage bag and found that all the materials were neatly arranged. He held his breath and walked towards the outside of the palace, but before he could get out of the palace door, he suddenly heard a voice coming from behind. "Brother Chen, are you leaving now?" Upon hearing this, Zuyun's body suddenly froze, and Fu Zhangjiang immediately appeared in front of him.